Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, fought in 1212, stands as one of the most pivotal moments in history, a clash that fundamentally reshaped the future of both Europe and Spain. In this video, we will provide an in-depth analysis of how this monumental confrontation between the Almohad Caliphate and the Christian kingdoms signaled the dawn of a new era. On this episode of BattleLine History, we will explore the roots of conflict, an investigation into the true causes and the complex political landscape of the time, military tactics, a detailed breakdown of the strategies and battlefield formations of both opposing forces, tactical analysis, a step-by-step movement guide using historical maps to track every maneuver, the legacy of 1212, the long-term historical consequences and the impact on the world stage. If you are passionate about history and military tactics, join us as we uncover how a single day of war altered the course of centuries. To understand the fire that burned in the hearts of the Christian kings in 1212, we must first look at the ashes of 1195. 17 years before Las Navas de Tolosa, the plains of Alarcos witnessed a slaughter that nearly ended the Christian presence in central Spain. King Alfonso VIII of Castile, driven by youthful arrogance, had charged headlong into the Almohad trap. The result? A catastrophe. Thousands of Christian knights were cut down, and Alfonso was forced to flee, leaving his kingdom vulnerable and his pride shattered. The Almohad Caliph, Yaqub al-Mansur, didn't just win a battle, he broke the spirit of the Reconquista for a generation. For nearly 2 decades, the memory of Alarcos was a ghost that haunted every council and every prayer in Toledo. While Alfonso rebuilt his shattered walls, the Almohad Caliphate was reaching the zenith of its power. Stretching from the edges of the Sahara Desert to the fertile valleys of Andalusia, it was an empire built on discipline and religious fervor. By the early 13th century, the new caliph, Muhammad al-Nasir, known to the Christians as Mira Mamun, decided it was time for the final blow. He declared a great jihad, summoning warriors from across North Africa. Thousands of Berber tribesmen, skilled archers, and the terrifying Black Guard crossed the Strait of Gibraltar. Their goal was simple: to push the Christian frontier back to the Pyrenees and turn the entire peninsula into a permanent stronghold of the Caliphate. Alfonso VIII knew that Castile could not stand alone. If he fought as a king, he would fail again. He had to fight as a champion of the faith. He sent secret envoys to Rome, pleading with Pope Innocent III. The message was clear: if Spain falls, Rome is next. In a masterstroke of diplomacy, the Pope declared the struggle in Spain a crusade, granting the same spiritual rewards to those fighting the Almohads as those fighting in Jerusalem. This changed everything. No longer was this a border dispute between local kings. It became a holy war. Knights from France, Aragon and Navarre began to march toward Toledo, united by a single purpose: to erase the shame of Alarcos. The Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa was far more than a simple clash of numbers. It was a collision of 2 entirely different worlds of warfare. On one side stood the ironclad resolve of feudal Europe, and on the other, the disciplined, tactical flexibility of the Almohad Empire. To the north, the Christian coalition's ultimate weapon was the heavy cavalry. These were the elite knights of Castile, Aragon, and Navarre, men born and bred for the saddle. Clad in heavy chainmail, carrying massive wooden lances and broadswords, they were the medieval equivalent of modern tanks. Their entire strategy relied on the shock charge, a thunderous, high-speed gallop designed to break the enemy's morale and physical lines in a single devastating impact. For a knight, the battlefield was a place of personal glory and brute force. However, across the valley, the Almohads played a different game. Their strength lay in light cavalry and archery, inherited from their North African and Saharan roots. Unlike the heavy knights, these warriors wore light turbans and flowing robes, prioritizing speed over armor. Riding nimble Arabian horses, they utilized hit-and-run tactics, showering the Christian ranks with arrows from their composite bows, and then retreating before the knights could even close the gap. Their goal was to frustrate, tire, and lure the heavy cavalry into terrain where their horses would stumble. But the most chilling sight on the battlefield was the caliph's personal shield, the Black Guard, or the imasibilan. These were thousands of elite African warriors who formed a terrifying human fortress around the caliph's red tent. To prove they would never retreat, they were famously chained together at the ankles, spear to spear and shield to shield. It was an unbreakable wall of flesh and iron, a message to the Christians that to reach the caliph, they would have to step over the body of every single guard. It was a clash of philosophies, European brute force against Almohad discipline, the heavy lance against the curved scimitar. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test which of these two legendary war machines. As the scorching July sun of 1212 beat down upon the Sierra Morena mountains, the Christian crusade ground to a sudden, agonizing halt. They had reached the Despieperos, the narrow, jagged pass known as the Gorge of the Dogs. The Almohad Caliph, Muhammad al-Nasir, was no fool. He knew the terrain was his greatest ally. He had fortified every peak and lined every narrow ridge with thousands of elite archers and skirmishers. For the Christian coalition, this was a death trap. Their greatest strength, the heavy armored cavalry, was completely neutralized by the steep cliffs and narrow paths. Alfonso VIII of Castile looked upon the heights and saw only certain slaughter. To force the pass was suicide, to stay meant starvation, and to retreat would mean the final collapse of the Christian kingdoms in Spain. The momentum of the crusade was dying in the mountain air. But then, out of the dusty shadows of the camp, came a turning point that felt like divine intervention. A local shepherd, Martin Halagia, was brought before the kings. A man of the earth, he spoke of a secret, forgotten trail, the Puerta del Rey. It was a treacherous, winding path that bypasses the Almohad strongholds entirely, emerging onto the high plains of Las Navas de Tolosa, directly behind the enemy's primary defenses. It was a gamble that would decide the fate of a continent. Under the shroud of a moonless night, the massive Christian host, thousands of men and horses, began a silent, agonizing march. They moved like ghosts through the rocky ravines, muffled by the darkness. When the first light of dawn on July 16th broke over the horizon, the Almohad camp awoke to a sight that defied logic. The entire Christian army, which should have been trapped miles away in the gorge, was now fully deployed in battle formation on the open plains. The mountains had failed the caliph. The trap had been bypassed. Now, there was nowhere left to hide. On this dusty plateau, the future of the West would be decided by cold steel. The morning of July 16th, 1212, brought with it a heat that seemed to bake the very soul. On the dusty plains of Las Navas de Tolosa, two civilizations stood face to face, separated only by a few hundred yards of dry earth. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, leather, and the metallic tang of thousands of unsheathed swords. At exactly 9 o'clock, the heavy silence was shattered. King Alfonso VIII raised his sword high into the burning sky, and a single piercing trumpet blast echoed across the valley. It was the signal. The Christian vanguard, led by the fearless Diego López de Haro, began to move. At first, it was a slow rhythmic trot, a wall of iron and cross-emblazoned shields moving in perfect, deadly unison. But as the distance closed, the trot became a thunderous gallop. The earth beneath Las Navas de Tolosa began to tremble as if an earthquake had been unleashed. Thousands of armored hooves drummed a rhythm of death into the soil. Lances were lowered, pointing like a forest of steel at the heart of the Almohad line. The Almohads did not flinch. From the center of their formation, a massive wave of arrows was unleashed, darkening the sun for a few brief seconds. But the iron-clad knights did not stop. With a roar that drowned out the world, the two armies collided. The sound of the impact was like a mountain collapsing, the sickening crunch of wood splintering, the scream of horses, and the deafening ring of steel hitting steel. The Christian knights smashed into the Almohad front lines like a massive armored piston. Men were thrown into the air like autumn leaves. In those first few minutes, the carnage was absolute. But the Almohads were disciplined and vast in number. They absorbed the shock. Slowly, the momentum of the charge began to stall. The light cavalry of the Caliph began to swarm around the flanks of the knights, stabbing at the unarmored bellies of the horses. The battle descended into a chaotic, grinding struggle of man against man. Blood began to soak into the dry earth, turning the dust into a crimson mud. The crusade was now fighting for its very life in a sea of green and red.